Right, hi there YouTube. I thought I'd just do a quick updated studio tour. As I think since the last time I did a bit of a walkthrough on my gear, there's been a lot of new flashing lights and so on added. So I'm kind of getting near, well I say I'm getting near to completing my setup. I'm sure I'm going to end up buying more synths and loads of other stuff in the future. But anyway, I'll do a quick kind of tour round. I'm just doing this on my phone, so apologies for the sound. It's not brilliant, but hopefully you can see. And then I'll try and sort of explain how I connect everything together. Because I've basically sort of gone away from using the computer a lot. So I've gone very much more hardware based now. I just find it a lot more inspiring to write tracks that way. You kind of writing with your ears rather than with your eyes, looking at a screen the whole time. So it's definitely a much more enjoyable experience. So starting over here, we have a Novation Launch Key 49, which I'm basically just using sort of as a synth with iPad synths. At the moment I've got the IMS20, the Korg app. It's probably about as close as I'll get to getting an MS20. So that's just connected up via MIDI, camera connection kit here, going out the back of the Novation. It's getting all its power from the iPad. So it's got a little bass sound on there. So that's just basically using, let's say, the IMS20 and whatever other synth apps I would want to use on that. Because I'm running out of audio inputs on my MX1 mixer, that's actually going to the input of the TR8. So that's going, so I can control the volume of that from this bit here. So going through then the Aira gear, we've got the TR8. Down here we've got the System 1 synth, the MX1 mixer, and then going down over here to we have a TP3. Coming back across this side, I've got the M Audio Trigger Finger Pro. What have we got over here? Okay, we've got a little Korg Nano control which is not being used at the moment. We've got two Volcas. We've got the Volca keys and the Volca bass, which are just amazing little instruments. If you've not got them and you want some fat analog sounds, get them because they are absolutely amazing. The recent additions to the family, we've got two Electribes. We've got the the Electribe sampler, and then just the normal Electribe. Over here we've got an iPad which I tend to just run Korg Gadget on. Which is connected to the MPK Mini. It's got a little synth thing going on there at the moment. What we've got under here is another little mixer just to add a few more connections. Then monitoring wise, I'm using the Tannoy Reveal speakers for my main monitoring, and I've got these crappy little Edirol things I've had for years, which are great for testing your mixers on nasty speakers. Moving on over here then, we've got a laptop running Ableton Live, just about to see it there, which, like I say, I'm not using that much at the moment now. That's mainly is just for recording. So I record all my live hardware into there and then use that for recording and mixing rather than any kind of live performance, although I do use it for triggering a few samples and so on, which I would do via push. We've then got a Roland SPDS drum pad, not plugged in at the moment, but that gives me the ability for some live drumming. Some lighting. We've got a cam LED party bar up there. We've got a cam moon glow thing there next to strange polystyrene headman just there. And down here we've got a rack mount, which you can't really see very well, but the top one is a Chauvet Obey, whatever it is. I can't remember what is it? It's an Obey 10. Yeah, an Obey 10. And down here we've got a quite an old Yamaha TMX drum sound module, which has got some great old kind of sounds on it. So, how does this all work? Because what happens is when I press play on here, okay, everything kind of starts nicely. So my Trigger Finger Pro is basically the control center for everything. I have this set up on, if I can get that on the screen, when you first turn it on, it's on Arsenal mode. I have it on MIDI mode, because I'm just basically using it as a MIDI controller. And then down here I have my songs and sequences and so on that I can load in. So what's happening with that is I'm taking a standard 5-pin MIDI connector, which is going from that to the in of the MX1, and I've got that set up to pass MIDI through because that's got MIDI through. So we're then taking the MIDI out of that, if I remember rightly, which is going to then be going into the System 1. Again, the MIDI is just going through that into the TR8, again going through that. And if I remember rightly, there is a MIDI out then going to the Volca keys. What I've then got is separately, because the TB3 is getting its MIDI via the USB from the MX1, that's synced up to that. I've then just got a MIDI out from the TB3 going to the MIDI in of the Volca bass, so that's sending MIDI clock to that. So when I press play on the Triggerfinger Pro, it basically starts the TR8 playing, the Volca keys playing, the Volca bass playing, the MX1 playing, so I've got the performance facilities on that. The TB3 will start playing, and that will send its MIDI clock to the Volca bass. So if I just demonstrate that for now, I'll just press play on here. Okay, so you can see that's now playing. We've got the MX1 playing. We've got the Volca keys playing, the Volca bass playing, and the TB3 is playing. That also synchronises up if I want to use, for example, an ARP on the System 1. If I just get an ARP playing, as long as I start it on time. Put it on key hold, try again. Okay, so everything is synchronized up like that. It took a while to get it going that way around, but managed to do it. What I've then got actually is the MIDI out coming from the Triggerfinger Pro. I've got a MIDI splitter cable in there, so that's sending one lot of MIDI information to everything as I just described, and then the second cable is going down to the Yamaha TMX down here, because that's not got MIDI through. So I couldn't pass any MIDI through that, and I was running out of connections. So what's that's doing is I've got these pads set up, because the great thing with the Triggerfinger Pro is you can basically put any pad on any MIDI channel. So we've got these pads down here. These purple pads are sending MIDI information to the Yamaha drum sound module. So for example, to set that up, all I did was you press pad, okay, and then we're going to go on edit pads up there, and then if you go on more, you can choose the MIDI channel. So MIDI channel 9, I've got my drum sound module set to MIDI channel 9, so all of these pads down here are sending MIDI out on MIDI channel 9, and then all you've got to do is set your note on this knob here to tell it which sound to play. So I've got clap on there, I've got a ride cymbal, got like some congery sounds, a reverse thing, some toms, like a shaker and so on there. The blue pads, in the same way, are sending MIDI to the Volca keys. Okay, so that gives me the option to sequence the sounds of the Volca keys as well from the Triggerfinger Pro. The reason I've done that is you can only have one bar on the Volca keys unless you're half the speed and so on, so it's a bit restrictive, and you've only got a limited number of patterns that you can use on there. I mean, this has got limits on it, but not as much as that, because you can have 4 bars on here. So sometimes I'm using that to sequence the Volca keys as well, and I can basically send, I think one track I've got, if I load in the, I think it's this second track. No, sorry, pressed the wrong button. That one. And then on pad bank 2, these red ones, okay, that's actually sending MIDI from here to the System 1. I've got all that on that channel. So I can also sequence the System 1 from there as well. And I can do that basically for anything. As long as the MIDI channels are set up, I can sequence the TR8 from here, and so on. So the possibilities are endless, really, with that. Then going on to the Electribes, again, I've got a little bit of restriction because these haven't got MIDI through. So what I'm basically doing with these is I'm taking the sync out from the Volca keys, and that's going into the Electribe sampler. So that's sending the clock to that. And then I'm doing the sync out from the sampler going into the Electribe. So as long as the Volcas are playing, that's sending clock to the Electribes. And that way, when I press play, as long as I press play on beat 1, that's going to all stay nice and in time. And the same thing with both of those. And that gives me the flexibility to stop and start aspects of those as well, which seems to work okay. And then basically Ableton Live, I have it set up so that when I press play, actually I've not got it connected up via USB at the moment. So sometimes I'll use Ableton Link, which you can see is going now at the moment. And I usually have it on external sync. I'm not sure if this will work or not. So when I press play on... Oh, yeah, yep. Okay, so when I'm pressing play on the Triggerfinger Pro over here, it's starting Ableton Live playing. That then gives me the ability to have loops, samples or whatever that I would trigger from push, and again that's all going to stay in time, all coming from the master clock from the Triggerfinger Pro. Under here, DJ controller, forgot about that. He's got the old Behringer CMD4 controller under there, which is not plugged in at the moment. So I think that's pretty much it. I have hours of fun in here playing on these, and they look pretty awesome as well, with all the nice flashing lights. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do. That is my setup. Just taking you around the rest of the studio. We've got an old piano down there, and then over here, let's move some chairs out of the way. We've got a couple of drum kits, because I'm actually, as well as being a music producer, I am a drum teacher, which is kind of like my main job. So I've got 2 electric kits. We've got a Joe Becky kit, which is this one, which is built to look like an acoustic kit. Absolutely amazing kit. And then we have a D-drum kit over here, which is actually also a pretty amazing electronic kit. And they're both connected through, they're sharing the sounds by the Minions. The D-drum 4 sound module, and we've got a Roland TD3 sound module down there as well. An old acoustic guitar, an old mixer, and somewhere for people to sit, make coffee, and drink water. So there we go. That is my studio, and a quick explanation of how all of this stuff works. If you've got any questions, or you're not sure about anything that I've gone through in the video, leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for watching. Okay, a little addition to this video, because I realised I'd not actually talked about what's happening with all the audio. So everything's basically going through the MX1 as the mixer. So channel 1, what's happening on this one is this is the output from this little mixer under here. So I've got both the Electribes down here. Okay, they're going into that mixer. The output of that is going into one. So I've got control of both Electribes volume off those, and obviously I've got independent control on this mixer down there of each of the Electribes. Channel 2, if I remember rightly, I think is the... yeah. So that's the iPad. So that's just taking an audio cable out into the back of the MX1, and that's on channel 2. Channel 3, I've got the drum sound module, the Yamaha one down here. Again, just standard audio cable coming out of that, going into channel 3. Channel 4 is the Volca bass. Channel 5 is the Volca key. So I've got control of all of those separately on those. I'm not using channel 6. So then we've got the USB connections, which is taking the audio from the other Aira gear. So USB 1 is getting the audio via USB from the TR8. USB 2 is getting the audio from the System 1, and USB is getting 3 is getting the audio from the TR8. USB 4 is not used at the moment. And then PC, that's going to take the audio from Ableton Live, just on that channel. So I've got an overall control of the volume from the computer off that, and it also gives me the option then for stuff from Ableton to apply the effects from here or within Ableton Live as well. So yeah, I think that probably, just in case anybody got any questions about, you know, how it's all connected up and where the audio is going, that should hopefully answer that question. Actually, one last thing, just the settings for within Ableton Live are as follows. I use my MX1 as my sound card. So if I can just try and get this so you can see this. Obviously in the hardware setup I've got the MX1 selected. For my output, because I'm just in the output, it's 17 and 18, got to make sure that one's switched on. And then that's selected down here as my master output. So when I play on here, that loop will play. So first thing I've got to do is make sure that Ableton is running, because at the moment it's not. So I have to press play on the Trigger Finger Pro, which I'm doing now. Okay, so that's started Ableton playing. I've got everything else muted out. But if I then launch that drum loop from push, okay, you can hear that will start playing. That started that loop playing, and then that's all in time with the Trigger Finger Pro. So if I go over here to my sequence, okay, and there's the tempo. At the moment it's 125. If I slow that down, okay, you can hear it's slowing Ableton Live down now as well. So as long as all your clips and everything are warped properly, everything stays nice and in time together. So hope that was of interest, and hopefully, you know, you might be able to pick up a few tips and tricks from what I do with my stuff. And I say, any comments, leave them below and I'll try and answer them. Thanks for watching.